Hello and welcome to the fourth lecture of this online training program on foundational education leadership for early childhood care and education. Today what we are going to discuss in this fourth lecture is about understanding the nurturing stage in detail from novice to master, how to turn a novice into a master. Now that we have discussed in detail what an educational leader is, what are his facets, and how he needs to cultivate the aspects of identify as well as expose the aspects of education, multiple intelligence into the children, and then find interest, inclination, and passion of the children and identify that. And then comes this nurturing, the crucial stage of nurturing. As we have already understood that this is the most crucial stage which every child is trying to attain and reach to, from where he can start growing and his education in a particular domain or field starts, because he is now a novice. He has identified a domain, that this is the domain I want to pursue, and then how to become a master in this domain. So that is how this whole thing proceeds. So this whole idea of education has now turned to a very mechanical exercise now, and it is not only a mechanical exercise, it's a very interesting exercise now in terms of how to turn this novice who has a certain kind of interest. He has expressed that I want to become a professional in this field, how to become this kind of a professional. And maybe say for example a Virat Kohli, young Virat Kohli wanting to become a Sachin Tendulkar, or maybe a young Shreya Ghoshal wanting to become Lata Mangeshkar, or maybe say for example take example of a young scientist, or a young prodigy, say for example Tathagat Avatar Tulsi wanting to become Einstein. So these are the kind of things you are looking at, how to turn this novice into a master, how to train him, this prodigy. Every child is a prodigy. Now he has identified that I want to pursue that domain, I love this domain, I want to build a career in this domain. How to do that? So that is the agenda of this lecture. So moving further, if you look at the stages in the nurturing phase, there is a novice. Then a novice is someone who has no professional experience, no exposure, no knowledge and skills regarding the particular profession. So when we talk about Cass, he and in Cass, he has certain kind of attitude. He might have developed a little bit of habits, little bit, but he has no knowledge or expertise or skills. So knowledge and skills are zero. So here the delta cas is zero for the novice, and for an expert the delta cas is very high. It might be in the range of, it cannot be infinite, but it is very high. So that delta cas from 0 to very high, and that difference has to be cultivated over a period of time, and that build up has to take place. So a novice is someone who has no professional experience in the particular field. A beginner will be someone who has been exposed to certain situational components of the field, and some exposure has been provided. A beginner is someone who has some out of the, if we talk about the 10,000 hour rule, so 1,000 hours of experience or 500 hours of experience. So then we can say that he has begun. So less than 500 hours we will call it a novice, but around 1000 to 2000 hours it will be more of a beginner kind of a thing. Then comes the competence stage. A competent person is one who begins to understand actions in terms of long-term goals. So how the particular actions are going to build the knowledge or skill set, or how that is going to make him a better professional. So when the actions, what is he is performing, he is performing the person or the student or the pupil starts relating it to long-term goals, then he starts building certain amount of competency and becomes a little competent in that regard. Proficiency or proficient person perceives situations as wholes and rather than in terms of aspects. So when a person or an individual or a student starts perceiving the situation as a whole and the long-term aspect of it, he starts understanding the long-term aspect and how, and not only aspect, he starts understanding the whole situation and how it relates the life cycle. If he starts understanding, then he starts becoming proficient in that profession. And expert or the master is one who has intuitive grasp of the situation and zeroes in on the accurate reason of the problem. So he identifies the problem, solves the problem, and he does it intuitively. So he does not have to do a very thorough and structural analysis, and so it is done by him intuitively. So then a person becomes a master. Obviously a master can elucidate how he or she does it, that is a different kind of a thing, but a master is one who does it in real time, solves problems in real time. So say for example, Virat Kohli. I keep taking examples of professionals from the sports domain because if I keep taking it from the linguistic domain or from the analytical domain, it is anyways very much appreciated in the educational space. So I keep taking it from the sports domain. So say for example, a new delivery comes in, say for example, Tisra, a new delivery comes in. Then Virat Kohli is facing it, and final match of the World Cup is going on. Then that has to be countered then and there only. A new bowler has come up with a new delivery, then that has to be countered then and there only, because that result matters and that result has to be done, obtained in real time. So a situation arises, two wickets have fallen and people are not understanding how this delivery is going on. The person has to go in there and mitigate this problem then and there only. Another example can be, say for example, Michael Schumacher. He is facing some problem with his car. He has to mitigate that problem and win the race. As simple as that. Similarly, it can be with anyone. So it maybe a real-time space station is getting launched, and that time some technical flaw is getting created. The project head has to take it on the go. Whatever situation arises, he has to take it on the go. So that is the characteristic of a master. So that is how a novice is different from a expert. So if we compare a novice and expert, how though the difference is there in terms of knowledge and skill characteristic as well as problem solving behavior, we will find that novices have sparse knowledge set while experts have a large store of domain specific knowledge. First thing is domain specific knowledge is very much in there in the, so expert is one who has expertise in and exposure to whatever is happening in the field, and he has knowledge base regarding whatever current developments are in the field. A novice is disconnected and amorphous structure. He is not able to connect the various bits and pieces that are there, while an expert is one who has knowledge richly interconnected and hierarchically structured. So expert is one who has a very structured way of thinking on the whole process. So that is what expert is. Say for example, educational expert. So how an educational expert is different from a novice in the education sector? Everyone knows that education is important for livelihood. Education is important for building a career. and social well-being and all that. So how expert in the education sector may be on provide a different kind of expertise. Expert in the education sector is well aware what are the opportunities which are coming up in the labor market, what are the various kinds of opportunities that are being created, what can get created, how it is related to the economic angle of it, and how it should be. So, and how it can get redesigned and how it is getting redesigned. So all those aspects he is able to connect. The bigger picture is with the expert, while the novice has bits and pieces of information, disconnected pieces of information, and an amorphous structure regarding the whole information, but he does not have the integrated whole. Novices have poorly formed and unrelated representations, so they are not able to relate the whole piece of information, and they are able to represent the things in an unrelated way, while experts are able to present the whole picture in a more integrated and multiple representations they can do. So that is the difference in terms of knowledge characteristic of a novice and an expert. Coming to the problem solving behavior, if you look at the problem solving behavior of a novice will largely independent of concepts. Problem solving will be largely independent of concepts, while an expert, what we will do, he'll conceptual knowledge impacts problem solving. So an expert will be able to understand the concept behind what is happening, and he will be able to relate it to the concept, and that is how he solves the problem. And a novice is not able to relate the concepts and the conceptual knowledge to the problem solving, his problem solving behavior. A novice, say for example in the domain, so this example has been taken from maybe an analytical kind of a scenario. So novice is more dependent on manipulating equations, and he is trying to uh, play with the equations and trying to find some kind of a solution, while an expert, what he will do is he will perform some kind of a qualitative analysis, and based on that he will form a certain kind of a algorithm through which he will do the quantitative analysis. So before proceeding to the quantitative analysis, the qualitative part will also be done through a structured qualitative analysis or a structured algorithm kind of a thing. Novices use backward looking means ends technique, while uses experts will use forward looking concept based strategy. So that these are the difference between in the problem solving behavior of a novice and a expert. So that is what one needs to understand in terms of what will be the behavior of a novice and the expert, and how a novice turns into experts, and the various grades he has to pass before he becomes an expert. So that is what. Yeah, coming to this discussion from understanding the difference between a novice and an expert as well as a master, to this example from the medical profession where a novice turns into a master by passing through various stages of from novice to initiate to apprentice to proficient to expert to master. So these are the stages he or she has to pass through. So that is what, if you look at the stages, so from a medical point of view, and you can see the source of it as well, you would understand that novice, initiate and apprentice are the processes in the professional phase only, in the professional training phase only, while proficient, expert and mastery are phases which are part of when one becomes a professional, then the proficiency, expert is mastery. So one has to go through various kinds of competitions, collaboration mechanisms and other kinds of possibilities, then only one is able to become a master. And passing through a proficiency, expert and master stages are part of the professional development stages as well. That is what one needs to understand. Yeah. So coming to this whole idea of novice, we have discussed it, but let us discuss it in bit more detail. So novice is someone who is uninitiated to the profession. He has minimal exposure to knowledge or skills of the professions. So attitude might have developed, an interest might have developed, or a passion or inclination might have been identified, but knowledge, skills, attitudes and habits of the professions are almost zero. So cash is zero at this point in time, and a master is someone who has very high cash in terms of knowledge, attitude, skills and habits. So that delta cash through this whole process has to be developed. Attitude has to be developed, skills have to be developed, habits have to be developed, and knowledge set has to be developed in any profession for that matter. This is the example from medical profession, but for any profession for that matter. Now coming to this idea of initiate, first you have to initiate someone into the profession. Initiate, obviously, someone who is a novice has been initiated into the profession in terms of that he has been exposed to the profession, that this is how it is and this is how it is played, but that is not at a professional level. It is only at a very crude level, that say for example people start playing cricket, and cricket is played by using a tennis ball. So that is not how professional cricket is played. Professional cricket is played with a leather ball. So maybe someone has already got the skills and the technique of a good batsman, but then the bounce of a tennis ball will be very different from a leather ball. So one needs to adjust to all that. So these kind of differences. So initiate will be someone, a novice who has been initiated or inducted into the profession. Say for example, a medical student being given the white coat, cricketer being given the whole cricket kit, and then starts playing with the leather ball. Maybe if he is planning to play test cricket, and test cricket, then play with the red ball, and one day cricket with the white ball, and the full duration of the cricket game, etc., that needs to be played. Then only he will develop the kind of endurance that is required, and lot of other things that are required. So that is why it's very important for the person to get inducted into the profession and introduced to the knowledge or skills that are required for this. So that is the initiation phase. Then comes the apprentice phase. In the apprentice phase, what happens? One starts demonstrating beginning ability to recall and apply relevant knowledge and procedural skills with strategic guidance or supervision. With some amount of guidance and supervision, the person, so maybe if you are playing with a very experienced cricketer, then you are able to demonstrate those kind of skills. Similarly, if you are singing with a very accomplished singer, then you are able to demonstrate those kind of skills. If you are doing some mistake in terms of your diction or pronunciation, or in terms of the whole uh, akar, alankar and all that, then the person can guide you and tell you that this is where you went wrong. So these are the kind of things that needs to be done, and you may rehearse and practice and repeat, and that happens at any and every stage, but that repetition count gets reduced as you move forward in this cycle. Beginning development of professional identity, then you start developing a professional identity, ability to engage in supervised practice. So you start engaging in supervised practice, and when you start moving from supervised practice to unsupervised, then you start becoming a more proficient. So proficient is someone who demonstrates ability to recall, apply and synthesize relevant knowledge and procedural skills, demonstrate successful, reliable, independent performance. So unsupervised and independent performance is something which is a key skill of a proficient professional, and then ongoing development of professional identity starts taking place. Then one becomes a fellow in terms of that he is also maybe a junior participant, but he is kind of a fellow. Then what happens, a fellow is also an expert, demonstrates ability to recall, apply, synthesize and evaluate application and relevance of knowledge, skills and procedural skills, demonstrates expert level or special knowledge. So some amount of special knowledge, some new skill, some amount of innovation starts coming in, and skillful and successful independent performance of professional responsibility starts coming in. So that is the level of an expertise. Reflective development of professional identity. Now also a reflective development, that how I can improve, what new things I can do, how I can tackle this scenario. And then as a fellow you start advising other people as well, maybe your senior sometimes. So maybe a senior is not able to find out solution to a problem, then you come up with some new kind of an idea, then that is the level of development of an expertise. And finally you become a master. A master demonstrates ability to teach or mentor less expert peers. So when you start mentoring people, and I have already talked about the various stages of in the education cycle, and I have talked about that from trainee you need to move to trainer and master trainer stage, but at the professional stage also you need to be a trainer. You need to demonstrate ability to teach or mentor less expert peers. Establish, because teaching is also a process of learning. You are, if Richard Feynman used to say that if you want to learn something, teach it. Teaching is the best way to learn something. So demonstrated ability to teach or mentor less expert peers is a very important way to learn new things. Establish formulation of professional identity, mastery of practice level, knowledge and procedural skills. So this is how a novice becomes a master. Novice, so some of the characteristic of a novice is uninitiated, needs supervision, and cannot be able to guide his less endowed peers, while a master is someone who works unsupervised, is able to guide his less endowed peers, and as well as he has certain kind of expertise that he or she has developed. So this is the whole graduation of cycle from novice to initiate to apprentice to proficient to expert to master. So from novice to master, the whole cycle and the whole stages. So if you talk about the characteristic associated with each stage, now it's a different model, but almost we are talking about the same thing. So if you talk about novice, he has concrete, literal, needs constant guidance, seeks affirmation regularly. So these are the characteristics associated with the novice stage. In the apprentice stage, begins to make connections, begins to apply skills, seeks affirmation after completion. At the practitioner stage, what happens? Manipulates multiple concepts, able to synthesize and generalize, and metacognition is seen. And at the expert stage, able to evaluate and create new things. Self-directed, looks for new learning opportunities. So at each stage, students have different kinds of learning. At the novice stage, what is required is step-by-step directions, scaffolding, frequent feedback, structured practice is required. Structured practice. So say for example in cricket, so one needs to teach a batsman what is the correct technique of putting the bat on the front foot, on the back foot, how to be there, right? So that is the kind of structured practice that is required. Innovation will come only at a later stage. So some kind of structured practice, because innovation will come, but that is will only come at a later stage. Apprentice. An apprentice, lot of group work is required. Application orientation is required. Self-evaluation, opportunities of self-evaluation and inquiry and research. A lot of inquiry and research, what you can do, how you can do, what new things you can do. So that kind of attitude needs to be cultivated. At the practitioner stage, if you talk about, more significant concepts need to be taught. Open inquiry is another thing that needs to be talked about. More resources needs to be provided and more problem solving opportunities need to be provided, and real time problem solving, problems which are unsolved in the real time domain. So at the practitioner stage, those kind of issues need to be brought forth. And at the expert stage, transdisciplinary challenges, so challenges which are beyond domains and fragmented, that this kind of a thing will be tackled by this kind of expert and nothing like that. Problem as it is without fragmentation across boundaries. So that kind of challenge. Self-directed projects need to be assigned. Collaboration needs to be taught because teamwork is very very important, and innovation. So these are some of the characteristics. So one needs to not take these as something dedicated to only one profession. One needs to understand it as a very holistic view and related to all the professions. So when we are talking about this whole idea of nurturing stage and nurturing for nurturing for various kinds of intelligences, what we are talking about is that you need to nurture various kinds of intelligences in various kinds of domains, and this kind of a process is true for any kind of domain. So whether you take linguistic intelligence or analytical intelligence, or maybe kinesthetic intelligence or a musical intelligence or a naturalistic intelligence or interpersonal, intrapersonal. So whatever case you may take, in each of these cases, one has the novice at one stage and one has to make him an expert, and how he has to and a master at some stage. So how one can become an expert and a master, he has to go through all the stages, improve his cash, accumulated cash in terms of knowledge, skill set, attitudes and habits. So those needs to be accumulated, and that is how this whole thing can be achieved. Now, having understood this whole idea of how this multiple intelligence framework is going to work, what are the various stages in the educational process, and how the nurturing stage is going to build in the whole process, and how the education needs to be looked at as a whole holistic level, that is, one only need not extract it from the education system but also contribute to the education system. So one need not only be a trainee but also a trainer. One need not only become an expert professional but also a master trainer at some point in time, so that he can teach and build new cadre of professionals. So that kind of attitude needs to be built among the apprentice or among the novices who come to the education system, because they need to be taught that you have to contribute to the education system. You need not only garner your benefits from the education system. So that is the difference one needs to understand. Also, if you are not able to train somebody else, at least your own children you need to train in a certain way, and it's a long haul project. One needs to understand that, and that project needs to be planned carefully and enacted as well as implemented very very carefully. In the next lecture and in the coming week, in this week and in the coming week, now we will start understanding the purpose of the foundational education stage. In the next lecture, we will talk about the purpose of the foundational education stage, and in the coming week, we will start delving deeper into the foundational stage, education stage in particular. Thank you. Looking forward to see you in the next lecture.